4 American service members are dead, 4 flag-draped coffins, 4 families who got the worst phone call a family can receive. And as of this morning, Monday, March the 2nd, 2026, the President of the United States is telling the American people that there will, quote, likely be more. More deaths in a war that, according to his own government's intelligence briefers, did not need to happen right now. Stay with me, because this story has a thread running through it that you need to follow all the way to the end, because where it leads is genuinely alarming. Let's go back to Saturday morning, February 28th. While most Americans were sleeping, the United States military, alongside Israeli forces, launched a massive joint operation against Iran called Operation Epic Fury. Strikes across more than 1,000 targets, according to U.S. Central Command. B-2 stealth bombers, aircraft carriers, the largest U.S. military presence in the Middle East in decades, pre-positioned there over the preceding weeks. This was not improvised. This was planned. And then in the early hours of Saturday morning, it happened. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, 86 years old, was killed. Iranian state television confirmed it, and President Trump announced it on Truth Social, not in an Oval Office address, not before a joint session of Congress, not in a primetime press conference, but on a social media platform he owns in an 8-minute video posted at roughly 2 a.m. That's how America found out it was at war. Now, here's where the thread begins. The administration's stated justification for these strikes, the legal and moral rationale they offered to the American people, was that Iran posed an imminent threat. Trump said in that video that the objective was, quote, to defend the American people by eliminating imminent threats from the Iranian regime. Senior administration officials told reporters Saturday there were indicators that Iran was preparing to launch preemptive missile attacks against U.S. bases in the region that could create a mass casualty situation. That was the case they made. Imminent threat. Act now or Americans die. Except, and this is the thread, that's not what their own intelligence said. According to reporting from CNN, the Associated Press, and Politico, Pentagon briefers told bipartisan congressional staff on Sunday, in a session that lasted more than 90 minutes, that U.S. intelligence did not suggest Iran was preparing to launch a preemptive strike against American forces. As Newsweek reported, the Pentagon acknowledged to congressional staff that Iran had no plans to strike U.S. forces or bases in the Middle East unless Israel attacked first. That's from the Trump administration's own briefers to Congress behind closed doors, under no obligation to spin it. Senator Mark Warner of Virginia, the ranking Democrat on the Senate Intelligence Committee, a man who was part of the Gang of Eight and has access to the most classified information available to any member of Congress, went on CNN's State of the Union on Sunday and said this directly. He had seen, quote, no intelligence that Iran was on the verge of launching any kind of preemptive strike against the United States of America. None. Zero. This is a war of choice, he said, chosen by Donald Trump. And yet 4 Americans are dead. They were ground-based army sustainment forces stationed in Kuwait. They were killed when an incoming Iranian munition struck a tactical operations center, according to Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. A 4th service member, initially listed as seriously wounded, succumbed to those wounds, according to CBS News and U.S. Central Command, bringing the total to 4 dead, with 5 others seriously wounded as of this morning. When asked about those deaths on Sunday, President Trump told NBC News, "We expect casualties with something like this. We have 3, but we expect casualties. But in the end, it's going to be a great deal for the world. A great deal for the world." Those are his exact words about the deaths of American soldiers. Now let's talk about Congress, because this is not just a moral story. This is a constitutional one. Article 1 of the United States Constitution gives Congress, not the president, the power to declare war. That's not a technicality. That's the whole design. The framers were terrified of exactly this: one person with unchecked authority to send the nation into war. And yet here we are. As Time magazine reported, members of Congress were informed of Operation Epic Fury shortly before it began. Not consulted, not asked for authorization, just notified. The White House says Secretary of State Marco Rubio briefed 7 members of the so-called Gang of Eight, the small group of bipartisan congressional leaders cleared for the most sensitive intelligence, before the strikes began. That's it. No vote, no debate, no authorization. Senator Tim Kaine of Virginia and Senator Rand Paul of Kentucky, a Democrat and a Republican, have already introduced a war powers resolution in the Senate that would require the president to obtain explicit congressional authorization before engaging in further hostilities. In the House, Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky and Democrat Ro Khanna of California have introduced a parallel resolution. Massie, a Republican, called the strikes acts of war unauthorized by Congress. He said, "I'm opposed to this war. This is not America first." Senator Paul put it even more plainly. "My oath of office is to the Constitution, so with studied care, I must oppose another presidential war." A CBS News poll conducted before the strikes found that 74% of Americans believed Trump would need congressional approval before taking military action against Iran. He did not seek it. And now here is perhaps the most telling number of this entire story. A Reuters Ipsos poll conducted on the very day the strikes began, Saturday, February 28th through Sunday, March 1st, found that only 27% of Americans approved of the military strikes. 27%, 43% disapproved. Nearly 3 in 10 were unsure. According to that same poll, 56% of Americans believe Trump is too willing to use military force to advance U.S. interests, including 23% of Republicans. Trump's overall approval rating has now slipped to 39%, according to Reuters Ipsos. This is, by historical comparison, extraordinary. After September 11th, 2001, 92% of Americans supported military action in Afghanistan. After the initial invasion of Iraq in 2003, 71% approved. The Iran strikes, 27%. This war may be the least popular major military action taken by an American president in modern history, and it's only been 4 days. The conflict is also rapidly widening. Iran launched retaliatory strikes across U.S. military installations and allied nations throughout the region: Bahrain, Kuwait, Qatar, the UAE, Iraq. Al Jazeera's casualty tracker, as of Monday at 1 p.m. GMT, counted at least 555 people killed inside Iran in the joint U.S.-Israeli strikes. Iran struck an airport runway at a British military base in Cyprus. Several Gulf states scrambled to intercept drones and ballistic missiles. Brent crude surged 10% to around $80 a barrel on Sunday alone, with analysts warning prices could climb toward $100. Reuters reported Monday that senior White House officials had privately warned the president that this escalation could be, quote, difficult to contain and could carry serious political risks for Republicans heading into the November midterms. Meanwhile, the administration cannot seem to settle on what its objective actually is. When Trump launched the operation, he cited Iran's nuclear program. Then officials suggested regime change. Then Trump said maybe a different leader, someone from within the current Iranian system, like what happened in Venezuela with Maduro, could be acceptable. Then Lindsey Graham held a press conference to say the goal is not regime change, but to change the threat, not the regime, adding that the United States will not be responsible for rebuilding Iran. So what is the plan? Even members of Congress who support the president have struggled to answer that. PBS noted this is the second time in 8 months the Trump administration has struck Iran, the first being Operation Midnight Hammer last June, targeting nuclear facilities. That operation, senators like Lisa Murkowski acknowledged, may not even have fully eliminated Iran's nuclear capabilities. It's a year later and we're still trying to decide that, she told Time. Here is what we know to be true as of this moment. Monday, March 2nd, 2026. Drawing from verified reporting by Reuters, NPR, CBS News, CNN, The Washington Post, PBS NewsHour, Time, The Associated Press, and Al Jazeera, 4 American service members are dead. 5 more were seriously wounded. The Trump administration launched a major war against Iran without congressional authorization. The administration's own intelligence briefers told Congress there was no evidence Iran was planning a preemptive strike. Only 27% of Americans approve of the operation, according to Reuters' Charles Ipsos. A bipartisan group of senators and representatives is now pushing to invoke the War Powers Act. Iran's retaliatory strikes have spread across 9 countries, and the president has said there will be more American deaths and described the situation as, quote, what often happens in war. The American public was not consulted. Congress was not consulted. The constitutional process was bypassed, and families across this country are now waiting, some in grief, some in fear, to find out what comes next in a conflict that, by the administration's own admission, could last for many weeks with casualties to follow. The question every American and every citizen of an allied nation watching this should be asking right now is simple. What is the plan? Who authorized it? And who is going to be held accountable? Those questions are not partisan. They are constitutional. They are moral. And as of tonight, they do not yet have answers. What we do know is this: the next several days will be critical. The full Congress is scheduled to receive a classified briefing from Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, CIA Director John Ratcliffe, and Joint Chiefs Chairman General Dan Kane later this week. Both chambers are expected to vote on war powers resolutions. Those votes will force every member of Congress, Republican and Democrat, to go on record. And the American public, according to every available poll, is watching closely, and they are not satisfied with an 8-minute Truth Social video posted at 2 a.m. as a substitute for accountability. Neither should any of us be.